Well, folks, here we are again for the weekly forecast. Last week we talked about the potential for some significant moisture across eastern Nebraska. The trough that did develop across the upper Midwest actually dug a little bit farther toward the southwest, and we've seen that precipitation band shift into central and western Nebraska, leaving much of eastern Nebraska fairly high and dry. The major activity for eastern Nebraska did fall in the midweek to late week time frame, as we've seen a couple pieces of energy move across the southern part of the state and intersect a cold front moving through the Dakotas that did touch off some scattered thunderstorm activity, which did give us at least the hope that if we can continue to get moisture, that it will alleviate some of the pressures of stress on this developing corn crop. Now, as we go forward in time, we're looking at a similar scenario where we have this cold air that's moved in with this late thunderstorm activity that will hold this weekend. And then as it progresses toward the northeast, we'll start to put some of that monsoon moisture from the desert southwest back into the central high plains, and we'll return to the scattered thunderstorm activity across the western part of the state, with several chances in the eastern part of the state as the activity moves into our region. So let's take a look at the upper models and see how this should play out if the models are correct as we go through this next 7-day period. And the first thing, of course, is the upper air trough that's bringing in this cooler temperatures. In fact, temperatures today and tomorrow are going to be very similar to what we would expect to see sometime during the middle to late part of September. We'll be looking at highs primarily in the 70s to low 80s across the state. And we do have the chance for isolated thunderstorm activity, but most of that should be across the western part of the state, where this monsoonal moisture will ride up against the backside of this trough and generate those thunderstorms. In eastern Nebraska, very likely that we will just see an isolated thunderstorm here and there, but no broad-based coverage. The same situation holds true for tomorrow, although we might start to see that moisture moving a little bit farther toward the east into the central part of the state. And especially during the overnight hours, there is indications as we move into Monday morning, Monday afternoon, that we'll get another piece of energy riding across the northern part of the state that should generate a pretty decent area of thunderstorm activity across northeastern Nebraska, with some of that expected to fall towards the southeastern Nebraska as it rides down the Mississippi or the Missouri River Valley. And if the models are correct, total quantitative precipitation for this 3-day period should be in the area of around a ½ an inch across extreme northwestern Nebraska, and as you move towards southeastern Nebraska, if we're lucky, we'll see 1.5 inches to 2 inches. I hope we will get that, but I think that's a little bit optimistic. Now, certainly as we get into Tuesday, we'll start to see the warm air returning into our region, and with that monsoonal flow coming around the top of this ridge, we could see some scattered thunderstorm activity developing once again across western Nebraska, lesser chance across eastern Nebraska, and then that will shift up into the Dakotas on Wednesday with just extreme northern Nebraska in the line for isolated thunderstorm activity. As we get into Thursday, we'll start to see a trough working in, and that's going to start to bring the activity farther southward into Nebraska. So there's a chance for scattered thunderstorm activity shifting into southern Nebraska during the afternoon hours, and that will continue through Friday morning as it passes to the south and east of the state. So as we look at the terms of temperatures, we're looking at primarily temperatures in the 70s this weekend across the east, moving up into the 80s next week. 90s look to be possible by midweek next week. 8 to 14-day forecast indicates cool temperatures to our north, and in terms of precipitation, the wet trend from the northern plains through the eastern United States.